Hi, Derek, and good morning, everybody. Sincere apologies for the delay in the start. I am out in Kinshasa in the DRC, and we've just had a power cut, which is something quite common, although it's less frequent now, but it unfortunately happened as we're about to start the presentation. So I will keep it brief. Thanks for those who've already sent through some questions, and I will try address them as we proceed with the presentation. In a nutshell, so Cushman and Wakefield BROLL, we manage just over 30,000 tenants across Africa, with services in plus minus 21 sub-Saharan African countries. We have physical presence in about a dozen of them, and then the rest we go in and out with best-in-class providers on the ground. Just to give you a brief overview of what is happening from an office perspective, Africa being fairly large, I will try segment it into three specific categories. So the key cities that are Anglophone speaking or English speaking, Johannesburg, Lagos, Accra, Nairobi, Lusaka, they've got a fair supply of office. And in terms of the demand, your big centers like Johannesburg, Cape Town, Lagos, the demand is somewhat reduced. And in places like Kenya, Zambia, it's actually going down to a certain respect. The second batch, I would classify it as, I'll take some samples from Francophone Africa, and there the likes of Abidjan, Kinshasa, Brazzaville, Dakar are all experiencing higher demand from an office perspective, and the supply is equally increasing as well. And the third batch is the Lusophone countries, and I've included Ethiopia there, where there's been a lot of price adjustments and there's been a lot of rent reductions because of historic prices that were somewhat higher than where we thought they would be. So in the first batch, the common trend is that there's a lot of consolidation taking place. So your big banks, your big attorney firms, the insurance companies are all consolidating. So they're looking at different ways to optimize the real estate. And of course, through this consolidation, they leave a lot of vacancies in their portfolio as well. In the second batch, a lot of these Francophone capital cities are experiencing migration in the sense that traditionally the corporate users were occupying villas, or they were occupying residential flats, and the trend now is for them to move into more corporate or more corporatized assets. And in the third batch, what we're starting to see is, historically it was build it and they'll come. So a lot of the landlords were just building assets, and tenants did not have a lot of flexibility in terms of choice or style. But we're starting to see a lot more engagement happening there. So some of the key drivers that the CEOs and CFOs look at in terms of ensuring that their assets work for them for the benefit of themselves is, of course, talent attraction. So talent attraction is something that is quite big and top of mind for CEOs and CFOs. The second one being talent retention. So they're looking at different ways to ensure that real estate becomes an enabler to retain key talent. They're also looking at better ways to ensure that wellness is improved within the real estate context. And this is physical wellness, it is mental wellness, and emotional wellness as well. Of course, the real estate still need to be an asset that can identify, or an asset that that can create some form of identity and brand for the client. And last but not least, it needs to be an environment where productivity can really be enhanced and optimized. So the days of location are somewhat being challenged with other items like productivity and wellness. And talking about wellness, one big concept that is taking shape on the continent is service offices and co-working. Of course, it comes with a lot of advantages, such as the ability to reduce your CapEx spend and still have the opportunity to utilize the space without having spent a lot upfront. These flexible spaces also give you the opportunity to have really short leases, which gives you, again, options to exit or options to relocate depending on your needs. Another advantage that these offices have is that you have access to support staff who are not necessarily on your direct payroll, and the user of the space feel that they've got more control of the unity that they enjoy. Johannesburg, for example, has already more than 20 noticeable serviced office providers. And this is a trend that is slowly trickling into the rest of the continent as well. Optimization is a big one, a big focus area for the corporate user. And of course, it's looking at ways to minimize the cost of occupancy whilst you improve your ROI. It's an extremely delicate exercise because there's the risk of cutting out the wrong cost or cutting out an element that is actually a strong contributor to productivity. So the introduction of technology really assists in terms of ensuring that the portfolio is optimized. The introduction of technology also facilitates the choice of location. It ensures that the buildings and the office environment is of the right size, depending on the functions of the different divisions of the occupiers in that space. A lot more time is also being spent on the analysis and decision-making around leasing versus owning versus building versus self-developing. And this also leads to greater optimization. There's a survey that was done with Cornet and Steelcase, where they mentioned that 57% of companies say that they reconfigure individual space to accommodate team spaces, and 41 say that they created cafes, meeting spaces, and other alternative workspaces specifically to augment experience and to enhance experience within the office environment. Now, one element that can assist with this experience is big data. And that's basically looking at the volume, the velocity, and the variety of information that you collect. And of course, that information means nothing if it is not analyzed to the T. The advantage that this big data provides is that you can have a personalized offering by looking at historical trends. So we have some in-house systems and in-house platforms that do assist in mining this data. And this data can then help us to assess historical patterns, which can reveal business opportunities. And these business opportunities can then assist in configuring office layouts or really understanding office usage, getting much closer to the parts of the offices that are not utilized and how best to optimize it. And it allows us to remain competitive. And of course, big data can also be manipulated, or it can also be assessed to provide data visually. And of course, gone are the days of relying purely on Excel. I think it's still a fantastic tool, but once you move on to greater platforms that give you visual analytics, it's much easier then to also make decisions. Yeah, so some of the key words or some of the key trends to look out for, I'll just touch on it briefly. I'm quite cautious about time. Hyper automation and hyper customization. So because of all this data that's out there, because of all the information that's out there, utilizing technology can really create bespoke solutions. And I think more and more clients are going to be demanding for such services. Of course, the big challenge that comes with this big data is privacy. So one needs to ensure that you've got the necessary means, the necessary governance structures to ensure that you still keep your employees' information private. The information could be utilized for decision making, but at the end of the day, it should not impact on the personal life of the employee or the user of the space. And smart buildings, smart cities are also items that will become a lot more relevant on the continent, and we're already starting to see a lot of new smart cities coming up in Rwanda, in Senegal, and I think this is a trend that will continue. Of course, blockchain, smart contracts are all concepts that are also becoming more and more relevant in our communities. And hopefully with improvement in infrastructure and with improvement in electrical supply, we will really be able to take advantage of these new initiatives. That's what I've had to share for today. Unfortunately, with the late start, I've had to keep it really short, but we will move on to questions now or comments if there are any. I had received a question about serviced offices and my view on whether it will take over the traditional offices completely. I think that there's definitely space for serviced offices, but it's difficult to say whether it will take over the traditional office space. I think that the advantage that the serviced office provides, you are able to sign much shorter leases that do not weigh a lot on your financials. It's a solution that a lot of clients are yearning for. And of course, as previously mentioned, the big advantage that you are able to get into a space that's upfront capex. And this, of course, is something that the majority of users would want to do, right? You want to move into a space that is ready to utilize a space that is very bespoke to your requirements. And I think that it's a solution that has been long awaited for on the continent. And most of the key capital cities have started subscribing to it. And again, the days of build it and they come are very limited. Most of the Francophone capital cities are still at that phase where the developers are dictating the utilization of space, and the developers are pretty much dictating how occupiers operate. And I think that is going to be changing fairly rapidly. Okay, another question here was around access to data for the continent. Right, so data is available. I think it's just a matter of knowing where to find it. We're not yet at a state where all the data is aggregated into a single platform, or rather onto a single platform that is readily available for usage by all parties. It still takes time to go and find the data. It takes time to quality assure the data and then congregate it into a single location. So internally, we do quite a lot of that, which of course assists in decision making. It allows us to be ahead of the curve as well when presenting our clients with specific information in terms of decision making.